Caleb finally got the raise he chased for 3 years. More money, every month. And somehow, he felt more trapped than before. The paycheck was bigger, but it was already spoken for. The card, the car, the loan he barely remembered taking, by the time the money arrived, it was already leaving. Maybe you know that feeling. You earn more than you used to, and somehow you feel further behind than ever. This is the story of how debt quietly takes ownership of your life, and how one line about money, written 3,000 years ago, shows you the way out.
Here's what nobody tells you about debt. It doesn't just cost you money, it costs you choices. When you owe, part of every future paycheck is already promised to someone else. You can't quit the job you hate, the payment is due. You can't say no, you need the income. You can't wait for the right opportunity, the interest doesn't sleep. Debt is a quiet landlord who lives inside your future, and most people pay him rent their whole lives, without ever noticing.
So Caleb did what everyone does, he decided to out-earn it. His friend Chase had the plan. You don't have a debt problem, Chase said. You have an income problem. Make more, hustle. There's this opportunity, there's always an opportunity. So Caleb took the side work, and for a while, it worked. The extra money came in, but something strange happened. The more he earned, the more he owed. A bigger paycheck felt like permission, a better car, a nicer place, one more thing on credit. The income went up, the debt went up faster. Because here's the trap, if you don't change how you handle money, more money doesn't free you. It just raises the ceiling on how much you can owe. Caleb wasn't climbing out of the hole, he was digging it wider, and calling it progress. It was Eli who stopped him, an older man who'd been exactly where Caleb was, and climbed out decades ago. Caleb expected a budgeting lecture. Instead, Eli said one line.
The borrower is slave to the lender. Proverbs 3,000 years old. And Caleb almost laughed until he understood it. Because notice what it does not say. It doesn't say, debt is a math problem. It says it's a bondage problem, a master and slave problem. The number on the statement was never the real issue. The real issue is who your future belongs to. And here's why that line outlives every financial fad. Debt is leverage, and leverage feels powerful right until the moment it isn't. One lost job, one medical bill, one bad month. The person with no debt gets a scare. The person buried in it gets wiped out. The wise were never afraid of a small life. They were afraid of the one bad month that takes everything. So they built lives that could survive it, which means the answer was never what Chase promised. Caleb didn't need to add more income. He needed to subtract what owned him.
So Caleb stopped trying to out-earn the hole and started closing it. He sat down with Hannah, and they did the unglamorous thing. First, the tourniquet. No new debt, nothing else on credit, no matter how good the deal looked. You can't fill a bucket while it's still draining. Then they wrote down every single thing they owed, all of it, in one place. And for the first time, the enemy had a face, smaller and beatable, not the vague dread it had been. Then they attacked, not the biggest debt, but the one that owned them most. Every extra dollar went there, not to a new opportunity, not to Chase's next scheme, to freedom. And they built one small, boring thing that changed everything, a buffer, a little cushion, so the next bad month wouldn't force them to borrow again. Because that's the loop that keeps people enslaved, the emergency with no margin, solved with one more loan. It was slow, it was quiet, it meant saying no, but something was happening Caleb hadn't felt in years. Every debt that disappeared was a piece of his future, handed back to him. Months later, another letter came, the same kind that used to make his stomach drop. Caleb opened it, and felt nothing, no fear, because nothing in his life was promised to anyone else anymore. Remember the raise, the one that felt like a trap? It finally felt like his. Not because he earned more, he didn't, but because for the first time, the money that came in was actually free to stay. That's what Proverbs understood that the spreadsheet misses. Debt was never about the numbers. It was about ownership. And the moment you stop owing, you stop being owned. You don't escape debt by earning more. You escape it by refusing to be a slave to the lender, one subtraction at a time.
So here's my question, and I read the comments. What's the one debt that owns you the most right now? Name it, because the thing with a name is the thing you can beat. But there's a deeper danger hiding under all of this. Caleb got free. The real question was whether he'd stay free or fall for the oldest trap of all, the feeling that he still didn't have enough. Because the reason most people fall back into debt isn't bad math. It's a hunger that never gets full. That's the next story.